welcome to the channel again. My name is Dr. DeAnda. I'm accompanied here by future, soon-to-be Dr. Sanchez, yeah. Which is, her channel is Psychology for Geeks. A lot of good work in there. First of all, I just want to mention that this video is not considered therapy. It's for educational purposes only. If you need any therapeutic assistance or you find yourself in an emergency matter, we'll leave the resources in the description below, and you can follow up with that. So I wanted to invite Mrs. I feel like people with a master's should get a title too. It feels weird going from a master's to like doctor. I was like, Miss Sanchez, future doctor. About the following topic, which is something that I share with clients often, is this, my saying, I can't remember if I read it somewhere. The message is only as good as the messenger it comes from. So that means is that sometimes clients come up with problems that have been triggered by like complaints or critical feedback or suggestions that create troubles for them in life that come from different sources. And so I offer the idea of the message is as only as good as the messenger it comes from. And then I elaborate after the client's
confused face.
Or I offer, not confused, but it's like, I offer like, can I elaborate on that just to explain what I mean? And they're like, oh yeah, please do. I'm like, okay, so I keep it kind of simple as I can. As well, okay, so like say I have a legal matter to address. I would not seek the advice of a medical doctor for legal advice, as I would not seek a priest for medical advice, right? Because they don't have the competence or the experience for it or the best knowledge for it, right? So that's similar. That notion can be applied to everyday interactions with people. Just because someone gives you advice does not mean that you should take it solidly with 100% accuracy. Sometimes it's best to take it with a grain of salt. And you're like, okay, it's something to take into perspective. What I have found, as well as colleagues and close friends, is helpful to, when you receive feedback from someone, to be mindful of the source. Is this source I would like, for lack of a better word, like legitimate in providing that feedback, or are they coming from an unfavorable place? For example, if someone has a certain degree of bitterness from relational experience, right? And they're giving relationship advice, I would think twice before taking that perspective or that advice to heart, right? Which would be different if you meet a couple who has had a healthy marriage. And again, take it with a grain of salt, because a healthy marriage can look differently, right? Healthy marriage can, a couple in an open marriage can have a healthy life dynamic, as well as a monogamous couple. Okay. That being said, though, a healthy relationship is a good source, right? Because oftentimes they have good communication skills, open communication, respectful, considerate, validating, etc. What are your thoughts about it, Ms. Sanchez?
Well, I think it's true. I think we tend to sometimes get feedback and take it very personally. Like, oh yes, that's exactly how it was, or that's exactly true, or I should have done that or could have done that in order to like have followed like the other person's advice. But you said perspective, and it just made me think, right? Everyone has a different perspective. So the message people are trying to give you, it's all based on their own perspective, which can be colored by tons of different things, right? How well they know you, what their mood is like at the moment, how well informed they are, their personality, the way they communicate just in general. So yes, I agree that everything that we are told, even if it's told, like you're being told something by a professional, I think it's completely okay for you to seek a second opinion, right? If they're if you're not feeling heard by this person, or you think they're missing something or not addressing something, then I think it's perfectly okay for you to seek a second opinion on that. It's very important, I think, especially when it has to do with your health, because we don't want things to be missed or found out like late or later stages.
Yes.
So we agree.
Adding to what you just said, yes. Just to add to your point though too, it is. I think it's worthy to add to your point about the professional field, that it's okay to seek more than one or two. They are even say 3 professionals' advice, because people in the community don't know, unless you work in the field and different fields, that we all get trained significantly different, right? And we take training significantly different, right? Two practicing professionals, up and coming ones, who have different backgrounds, may take the professional experience quite differently from each other, right? So, and I would say also, sometimes people who provide suggestions or guidance, professionally or non-professionally, they may have good intentions, or they may not have good intentions, right? Which is another thing to also consider. I was like, well, this person valid in their perspective, or are they coming from a place of ill intentions, maybe frustrations, like you were saying earlier?
Or they're trying to sell you something.
Truth. Salesman people. Sorry, just to be general. Not exclusive. Yes. So yes, and I often find in my clinical work that this is it can be such a huge trigger for people and stressor, that, well, in my view, it's unnecessary. And just to create increase this awareness, this mindfulness of this notion, like, take it with a grain of salt. Consider the circumstance and where the person is coming from that gave you this feedback or advice or critique. So you don't have to take it like right off the bat, like, oh man, they were truly like, no, hold on. Consider it. It may not be worth the struggle for you.
I was just thinking too, because as you were talking right now, I was like, okay, well, we both agree that you have to take everything people say, especially when it comes to advice, and something that's very important to you. You have to take it with a grain of salt, right? And seek a second opinion. And then I was thinking, I was like, okay, because my mind really works on like, how do we fix this? If we see a problem, it needs fixing, right? So how do you fix it? How do we fix it? So then I started thinking about then you said mindfulness, and that like just kind of clicked. And I was like, well, we may not be fully aware, but we are paying attention to like body language and tone of voice. We might not like actively think about it, but I think at some level we are picking up on that, because sometimes when someone talks to you, then you're like, I didn't really get a good feeling about that person, and you just can't put your finger on it. Maybe it was a tone of voice, it was how they were like trying to communicate with you, or the way they position their body when they were like communicating with you. So fixing the communication, right? So it might be good for us to pay attention to the person who's trying to deliver the message, what tone of voice they're using, what kind of words are they using, and like their body language, right? And that will give us more of, because then I was just thinking, I was like, well, if I was in a situation where somebody was trying to give me advice, I think my head would immediately go to like, especially if it was someone that was a professional in the field, I would be like, oh, they must be right, because they've gone through school and they had so many years of training. Or it will jump to, nah, that does not sound right. There's something fishy going on, right? And our minds can really trick us. So the more we are aware of what's going on in the moment and how the person is communicating with us and what they're saying, I think the easier it will be for us in the long run, right? Like not to fall for those salesmen, for those, you know, telemarketers.
Also, yeah.
Latinas, right? So, because there's a lot. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to. The Mexican in me is coming out, and I need to tell a story. I can't communicate unless I tell a story. Let me tell you a story. So
Go for it.
I don't know if you heard this, because we're both from Mexico, different parts of Mexico, like our families are from Mexico. Yeah. But have you heard of like people contacting family members in Mexico and saying, oh, you need to send money because we need to help, or your cousin, nephew, whatever, they need money to like cross the border or like to hospital bill or whatever it is, and then people fall prey to these people who are just trying to take their money. Have you heard of that happening?
I have, yes.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there are so many different, like, I think nowadays we're like, oh, you know, when you get those emails from like the Prince of Nigeria who's, you know, trying to give you some money or something, then we're all like, oh yeah, that's funny, but like we know not to believe that, but not everyone is aware of that, right? And the strategy is not always the same. And when it's like more personal to us, then we can be a bit quicker to believe.
Yeah, like I was waiting to hear the connection from because it was a little bit off. It seemed at first your story, but I see what you're saying, because it's also, it's a funny thing, and I'll tie it back to the professional field in a minute, because there's an old saying we have in our line of work. Did you know this saying? I'll finish it later. If you know it, don't say it. But put 5 therapists in a room. You know that one? And
maybe
I'll remind you later.
Yeah.
So with emails and the internet, oh my god. I grew up with internet and computers, right? And it's a funny thing, because sometimes people will get an email and they just trust it. And now you have to be mindful of like, where's the source coming from, right? It's more savvy than just like when you're interacting with someone and asking yourself, where is this? So we have to do it from all sorts of ways, right? In person, right? Or just through the telephone with someone. And now you also have to do it through online, like texting. Is this person, is there a critique? You have to deconstruct the text and be mindful that text is very limited source of communication, right? You're missing the tone of voice, you're missing the body language, all kinds of stuff. So the same rule applies, I would say, the same notion, like just be mindful of where it's coming from. Is it legit or not? To go back to the statement, just to encourage people to seek, I would say more than 2 professionals consults would be wise. That's what I try to do. Not anymore, because you and I know how the field works, and so it's like, I can manage with 2, maybe 1. It's like, it's okay. At the beginning, though, I would seek, even with medical doctors.
Well, I kind of wanted to interrupt you, because I think once you start becoming aware of that, like take everything with a grain of salt, then you get more savvy, right? And then you'll sort of know what questions to ask and sort of like what angle to look at this from. So it becomes a bit easier, I think, as you practice these skills.
Agree. Yeah. And to your point too, the saying from the professional field is that because we all come from different backgrounds and we have different trainings, and we can mold each person, even with similar backgrounds, we can mold the trainings in different ways to our professional development. So the saying is, put 5 therapists in a room, you're going to come out with 7 different answers. This goes again to the public. The saying is, in mental health field, I'm guessing it's also in medical field too, that put 5 clinicians or therapists in a room, 5, you're counting right, you're going to get 7 different answers. Because the philosophy, it goes so...
I would say even more than that, because even one person could be like, here are 3 or 4 different options or ways to look at a problem, especially like in our field. I feel like that's what we're trained to do.
Exactly. So
Internet's not working.
And what I
well.
say with that is also, yeah, and so say a professional tells you some suggestion or idea or some concluding statement, right? Like whatever. I would not take it like firmly. Seek someone else's consult, see what they say. Seek a third one. Sometimes I have different perspectives or conclusions compared to my colleagues, right? And we disagree politely, some more than others, I would say. You know.
And I think it's this is the perfect time for us to talk a little bit about like disclaimer, because we are both in the mental health field, and I think there is this misconception that therapists will tell you what to do, and that is not the case, right? So whatever suggestion a therapist tells you is kind of suggestions for you, things for you to try out, but it's not something like, oh, it has to be done this way or else it's not gonna, like, you're not gonna see progress, or like it's a black and white. Like, it's really up to you. And that kind of can be translated into every other area of our life, right? Like whether you're seeing a lawyer, a medical doctor, a therapist, or whatever, like take some time and step back, just take a couple of minutes, let them know, like if they're trying to rush you, just be like, give me a second to think. That way you're not sort of like steamrolled into agreeing to things or whatever.
Yes, and to emphasize your point, yes, I would say that practicing communication, advocacy for oneself is always a good idea. I always encourage that to people. And to your point, yes, we're talking about the message is only as good as a messenger. In human existence, I often tell everybody, client, non-client, coworker, in human existence, our own will is a factor that there's no, I mean, I can't say never, I'm not going to say an absolute, but it can rarely be controlled by an external force, right? Whomever. I say that because I'm guessing there's people who are going to think of exceptions or whatever. Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, our own will is always there, right? That'll be the end of the video. For now, thank you for joining, and see you next time.